Hey, look at this. This is my brand new Sony camera, right? ZV-E10 II. Just got it in the mail yesterday. So I ordered this thing because it's been a long time since I got a new camera. The cameras that I have are actually pretty old. Well, old in the technology world. Probably 6 years old, 7 years old. So one of the cameras, the AX53 that I actually really like, that's from when we went to Thailand. So I think that was 2016. So that's like 9 years old. I have another camera, again, about from that time frame. And then one more camera, I think I got in like 2018 or something like that. So all the cameras that I have here are 6 or 7 years old. And so now that I'm gonna be going on the road more, one way or another, by hook or by crook, I'll be going on the road more. I thought it might be time to upgrade my camera. Get a little bit smaller camera, something that's a little bit more portable, and after so many years, get a camera that I figured would have a higher quality for video and lenses and all of that kind of stuff, right? Again, technology moves on, so if you haven't upgraded in over 5 years, you might want to think about upgrading. And do you know what I'm going to do with this camera? I'm gonna send it back to Sony. I'm gonna send it back to Sony. We got the box right here. I did not get rid of the box. It is going into the box, and it is getting returned to Sony. And do you know why it's getting returned to Sony? I don't know. It's not that good. I mean, it's not bad. It's not a bad camera. You sit there, you use the camera, and you're like, wow, that's not a bad camera. If I did not already own cameras, I might keep that particular camera. But here's the thing, I do already own cameras, and they do a better job. I honestly believe the cameras that are from years ago do a better job. So that's gonna go to Sony. Again, I say that as a real world experience of things that I'm going through, and kind of think of a metaphor a lot for the technology world. Again, that's one of the things I've talked about is I do believe the technology industry, right, as I'm talking about this, plateaued somewhere around the 2015, 2016 timeframe. And everything since then, it's not that it's not better, it's not that it's not lighter, it's not that the bezels aren't smaller. But does anybody really care? Does anybody really, like going from a flip phone to a BlackBerry was revolutionary. Whoa! Going from a BlackBerry to an iPhone was revolutionary. Wow. Going from an iPhone, let's say a 3GS, to an iPhone 4 was revolutionary. Going from an, I don't know, iPhone 14 to damn near anything. Do you really care? Does it actually matter? It's all kind of just good enough. It got to be good enough. Again, most of these computers are good enough. They're fine. Most of the technology is fine. And that's the thing to be thinking about. Again, the technology world, where does our money come from? Where does our money really come from? Our money really comes from deployment, right? The printing cash is when you're deploying new products and services. Maintaining and managing previously installed legacy crap. There's a couple of dollars there, but it's not exactly, gonna make you a whole hell of a lot of money. So I do kind of wonder about that in the technology world. Again, especially with all the tariffs going on right now. And I think that's one of the interesting things with the tariffs, right? If you tariff food, right? If you tariff avocados, if avocados go up by 400%, the yuppies still gotta have their avocado toast. The yuppies may be crying into their avocado toast, but by God, they'll spend $100 on avocado on some toasted bread because that is a necessary requirement in the modern world. But one of the interesting things to think about, again, that's where I get worried with the economy too. Again, it's all these like psychological tipping points. When phones are already good enough. So I have an iPhone 14 Pro. I think I had an 11 Pro before that. And I just kind of upgraded because I don't think there was a great reason to upgrade. I just did. because it's been about 3 years. But again, I've been looking at the like the new iPhones or whatever. I like the USB-C. Again, that's the Eli. Why are you looking at a new iPhone? Well, it has USB-C. It would be nice, being able to use USB-C across all my devices. That would be useful. I don't know. Is it like $1,500 worth of usefulness? I don't know. Right? But you just sit there and you're like, again, if I've got an iPhone 14. Do I really care about whatever the latest iPhone is or the next one that comes down the pike? And that's from somebody like me, right? And so it's interesting, like, especially as tariffs and all these things get piled onto our economy, how many people are just gonna be like, nah. Again, oh, I got a camera. I bought the camera. I pulled the camera out. I tested the camera. Is it whatever? Yeah. Is it good enough to keep? No. So it's going to get shipped back. Think about that at scale. Think about 330 million people all deciding, yeah, right? Because think about this, right? If you spend $10 a day, imagine 330 people go, yeah, right? As we've talked about before, $1 million is essentially 20 man years. So if you assume, you just take it as the average American, let's say makes $50,000 a year, that means for every $1 million, that's 20 man years of economic activity that either gets created or gets destroyed. So $10 million is 200, $100 million is 2,000. So basically, that's something like, so if 330 million people decide, yeah, all right, 2,000, so it'd be 20, so that'd be $3.3 billion. So 2,000, 20,000, that'd be like 60,000 man years of economic activity just disappearing because people decided, yeah. That's why I get concerned. That's why I get worried. Again, I had a buddy of mine. He texted me the other day, or he texted me yesterday. It's like, how are you doing? I was like, well, I'm just sitting back, watching my society burn. It's a nice day. It's a beautiful day to watch your society go up in smoke. And it was weird. It's weird with people now. He's like, oh, so serious. It's like, yes? Fuck. Maybe I am the insane one. I don't know. I just talk with so many people around me. And when I say, yes, I am scared shitless of this. I am scared abjectly shitless of what's currently going on. Again, not globalization versus anti-globalization. How this stuff is being gone about. And what's fascinating to me, and people are like, oh, you worried about this a little bit? Like, yeah, I am. But anyways, what are you gonna do? You're gonna move along. So if you don't know who I am, or you may or may not know who I am, or what is it? Oh, I need to get back in the pattern of doing things. As you may or may not know, I'm Eli the Computer Guy. My current project is something called SiliconDojo.com. Basically, what if high-quality technology education was simply as accessible as water? So we have self-study classes, we have Python, Bottle Web App Framework, and SQL. You can just go to SiliconDojo.com and take those. We do Zoom group things. So on Wednesday, we're going to have Martin Lehner. He is a managed service provider up in the Yukon Territory. And he's going to come on for Zoom, and I'm going to talk to him, and then students are going to be able to ask him questions. As an MSP owner, as a cybersecurity professional, as an actual cybersecurity professional, and as a Canadian, you get to ask him some questions. And then we also do one-on-one conversations every Monday between 1 to 5. Oh, I get on Zoom, and we spend 30 minutes or more sometimes to discuss your issues with career and technology stacks and business and all of that kind of stuff. And that's what I do. And so what I want to talk about today, so why I do these particular videos is discuss the questions that I hear come up or other things. Again, to talk about the real world. And Gary Vaynerchuk once said, the best way to do content creation is to simply document what you're doing already. And I was like, wow, that sounds easy. I'll do that, Gary Vaynerchuk. Anyways, so the question, or the thing that came up that I noticed yesterday, not really a question per se, but it was frustration. It had me questioning. It had me questioning my own damn sanity. I was like, maybe I am insane. Anyways, the thing I want to talk about today is the meaning of words. The meaning of words and how words can be used in such a way where you can win arguments or such, but it might drive you down a very, very, very bad path. And it's something that you have to think about. And it's also something you have to be thinking about. Like when you go out for mentors and when you go out to find advisors, can you explain what the hell you're actually doing? And do you make sure that your advisors really understand what the hell it is that you're doing? So again, as an advisor, so I've been an advisor outside of doing these things. And one of the issues that you can run into is as an advisor, my job isn't your job, right? You run a company, you're a CEO, you're whatever else. You come to me for specialized information. Hey, you know something about client acquisition. Hey, you know about something about crowdfunding or content creation or whatever else, right? So you come to me and we're going to have this discussion over a relatively limited amount of time. Again, unless I'm actually on a board of advisors or an advisory board, or unless you pay me, and so I'm coming back again and again and again and again. The reality is we're going to sit down. You're going to tell me the issues that you're having, and I'm going to say, okay, as a blah, professional with so many years experience, this is how I see it, right? So if I'm looking, if for Silicon Dojo, if I was looking to do advertising or something like that, I might go out, find some marketing person, whatever, sit down and go, this is what I'm dealing with. What do you think that I should do? And then they'll give you the advice. The problem that you can run into, though, is that you're so invested into whatever the hell that you're doing, you know it frontwards and backwards and everything else. And so you kind of assume that your advisor or your mentor or whatever else has any idea what the hell you're doing. And the problem you run into is when you kind of assume or take for granted that the other person understands what the hell it is that you're doing, you can skip over like actually explaining some things, and then the advisor is going to give you advice based off of what they understand. They're gonna be like, okay, again, you'll hear this from advisors. Okay, I think I have a good grasp of the situation. You'll hear that from a lot of advisors. I think I have a grasp of what's going on here. Based off of that grasp, here is my advice. Here's the problem. What if they're off? What if they literally misunderstand what the hell you're saying? And so they're giving you a whole bunch of high quality advice that doesn't have a goddamn thing to do with you. Because they're giving advice based off of a situation that does not actually exist, right? And this is one thing to be thinking about with things like words and how you explain things, and when you go to advisors and such, how you talk with them to better elicit valuable information from the folks that you're going to. Remember, when you go to an advisor, this is not a social call in general. This is not about necessarily being friends or anything like this. This is a professional or a semi-professional engagement where basically somebody is sitting down with you because they're, again, it's like one of those things, like when you get into the technology world, whenever you get into any kind of profession, like you get niche, right? You get siloed into whatever it is that you're doing. So you as a professional, right? So you may have 20 years experience, you have experience in a lot of different technologies, but in the company that you're currently working at, what you're expected to do is this. This is all you're expected to do. Like let's say you were a full stack developer, you got into it with the company, and all they want you to do is front end work. So you knew front end, so you can do front end, but you didn't really want to be pigeonholed at front end, and now all of a sudden you're pigeonholed with front end. Well, the thing is, you have many, many years experience, somebody comes to you for advice, and like, hey, I'd like some advice on some back end stuff that I want to do. You're like, yay, right? I want to go and, I want to see what you're talking about with your back end, and I want to kind of throw some advice in there. I feel like I'm in the back end game again. All right, so when they go and when they're talking with you, it's very important to understand is that the advice and everything that they're giving, again, it might be in a friendlier tone than you would in a normal business environment, but it should be targeted towards actually solving the problem. And in order to actually solve the problem or to put you down the path, again, the advisor actually needs to understand what the hell is going on. I think about that with yesterday. So I had 2 calls yesterday. And again, it's interesting when I do these. Like I say, on Mondays, I do anywhere between 4 to 6 of these meetings. And it's very interesting how many times I feel like there's a thread between a lot of the conversations I have on any particular day, where it's like, oh wow, I've already gone through this problem before. But anyway, so I had 2 calls yesterday, 2 Zooms, where it was an interesting thing with the whole question of words. And if both sides don't really fully understand the words being used, that again, it can lead you down a bad path. And so the first one, so I was talking with somebody and they're trying to create a distributed system. So it's their system, I'm not going to go into it too much, but basically it's going to be a distributed system because everything in the modern world has to be distributed. Why does it have to be distributed? Oh, the hell knows. You ask people, why does this have to be distributed? And all of a sudden you get a whole conversation that has not a darn thing to do with tech stacks. Anyways, but the curious part with what they're trying to do, and again, it seems like an interesting idea. If they took the distributed out of it, it's like, hey, you know what would make your idea so much better? If you centralized it. Have you ever thought about this thing called a server rack? It's a new form of technology. Yeah, you slot servers into it, and then all those servers can communicate over the same local area network. The performance you're gonna get out of that's amazing. Anyways, that's for boomers. Apparently, that's for boomers. So, anyway, so basically, they're trying to develop this thing, and it's going to be distributed in the whole 9 yards. And the curious thing that came up is I'm still concerned, over resources. So one of the things you need to be thinking about whenever you're creating any of these systems is services are not services. Data is not simply data. The different types of data that you have and the different types of services that you provide will require dramatically more resources, or dramatically more, or dramatically less resources. It's one of the things I talk about with like social media sites. If you have Twitter, at least how Twitter was, I haven't used Twitter in a while, but if you have basically a text messaging system, right? You have a text messaging system that 300 million people use, right? Well, if you got 256 characters per message, and it's text, the resource utilization for that is relatively low. Whereas if you have YouTube, where some jackass will create a 4K video that's about 10 gigs in size, that'll get uploaded to their servers, that will then be encoded 7 different ways, and then will be spread across an entire CDN, right? So they're both social media sites, right? Twitter is a social media site, and YouTube is a social media site. The hardware resource consumption is just, it's not even exponential. I don't even know what it is. It's just 2 entirely different worlds, right? So anyways, what this person was talking about, again, being highly distributed, there's a lot of ways to do highly distributed stuff. Again, you can have communication systems and text messaging systems and all that kind of stuff. And so if you're like sitting there and you're like, oh, I want to create a distributed text messaging system, again, my first question, why? But past that, okay, fine. What resource consumption should be pretty low. What they're doing though, the resource consumption would be relatively significant. I mean, again, I don't know the actual math on it because I haven't actually done that. I do have experience with, the concept of the products that would be being used, and so I know that the resource utilization would be high. And so basically that was the thing. As I was talking to this person, I'm like, what's probably going to kill you is resource utilization. When you try to distribute resource utilization, it's just going to be a bear. So the whole question then is like when you're having high resource utilization and you're having some kind of node type system, and we know that every node that is going to be used, again, is going to be bogged down by this resource. It's not simply a file sharing. It's not simply like LimeWire or Napster. It's actually going to be using processing and all that. And I was like, so I'm very concerned about that. Again, if you have somebody on a Raspberry Pi, if you have somebody on a Potato and somebody on a MacBook Pro, how is the system going to handle that type of thing? Again, if I do have a MacBook MacBook Pro and you start burning all my CPU, that's gonna suck, right? How is that gonna work? And if you CPU throttle, right? If you CPU throttle, so if you say, okay, this product can only use 20% of the CPU, then are you going to get the performance that you actually need to make your thing do whatever the hell it's supposed to do? All right, I'm just sitting there and I'm like, look, the distributed resource consumption, I have a massive, it's question, huge amounts of questions on that. But the interesting part is that the person is like, well, that's all handled, and they were talking about these different technologies and these different languages, and just throwing it out there. They didn't really explain how the language or technology solved this particular problem, just saying this solves that problem. And what's curious, though, is as I was talking with this person, because again, no matter how good you are in the technology world, you don't know everything, right? You don't know, and so again, people start throwing out technologies. People start throwing out words, and sometimes you just gotta shrug your shoulders and go, okay, maybe that works. Again, I'm not the expert here. This is what you're putting, your blood and sweat into. Maybe that product does something I don't understand. But the curious thing was, as they were going along, as we were going back and forth, I was like, this just doesn't sound right. And so the curious thing is, so I then pulled up one of the pages for one of the products that they were talking about. That was kind of like, this will solve the problem. And then I looked, and I literally looked at the description, and I'm like, dude, this doesn't solve that problem. It literally explains what this product does, and this product doesn't solve your resource consumption in a massively distributed network problem, right? And I think that was the interesting thing to be thinking about as I was sitting there and listening to this person, is when I brought up issues, so many times the answer was to simply say, oh, this product will solve it. And then again, I have to go, I've only got 30 minutes for these damn things. Anyways, I had to go along with, okay, fine. Until I got to the point, I'm like, I don't think it does. And then when I went to take a look and saw that the product that he's talking about actually doesn't solve the issue. And it was kind of one of those curious things, again, about words and how words are used. And for a lot of people, are you really thinking about that? Again, like with the whole resource utilization thing. So for like, if you need to create a highly distributed system, like one of the questions to ask is, are you distributing processes or are you distributing processing, right? So processes are basically, let's say, encoding procedures. So let's say I want to create a highly distributed video encoding system. Right? So here's the thing. If you're distributing the processes, what would happen is each new video that needs to be encoded would essentially go into a queue. Whatever node is currently open would then pick up that particular video to then encode, and that would be a process. This node is doing a process, 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 this node is doing a process. And essentially, when we're talking about the process, it would be each individual video that goes up, it would go to a particular node for a process. Or again, if you're creating like a YouTube alternative, and so you need to create multiple versions of the same video, a 144, a 360, a 720, a 1080, right? That could be different processes. So basically, the video comes in the queue, you have a Raspberry Pi encoded at 144, you have an M2 Max encoded at 1080p, you have some supercomputer encoded at 4K or whatever, right? Those are the individual processes. The process is taking this video, turning it to 4K, taking this video, turning it to 1080p, taking this video and taking it to 144. Those are the individual process. Then there's processing, which again, if you're creating a system, again, and seems like it might be a way to do it. And what processing is, the actual being able to take the process itself and distribute the process itself over multiple nodes. So it's not that one computer is encoding to 1080p, it's you split that process into 5 different nodes. All those nodes are concurrently processing that into a 1080p video, and then you get the final product back. And I think the interesting thing is, as I was sitting there talking with the person, and again, it got very confusing because it's like, okay, here's a specific resource problem that I don't see how you're solving for. You're simply throwing out these words and these products, stating that they solve the problem, and I don't think they do. I don't think they do. So anyways, I'll be curious to see how that goes. And I just thought it was very interesting, because again, I just sat there again did the whole 30-minute spiel, and there was just, and it's interesting how people say things. Like, are you saying things so that the other person understands what the hell you're talking about? Or are you saying things to say words? Right? I think about this when I had employees, right? And one of the biggest problems I had with employees is, again, they would talk at each other, they wouldn't listen. Right? And again, this is one of those buzzwords or sayings that I say, and I've been saying it for a long time because I've literally been saying it since before I was on YouTube. And basically, it was like I look at my employees, and they're almost like ships launching broadsides of words at each other, but they weren't actually listening. Right? So that was one of the big things with my employees. So I had one of my field technicians, and I had the inside assistant to deal with secretarial work or whatever. Anyways, and there was some breakdown in communication. So when the person went out, they didn't necessarily bring the right tools or whatever. So one of the things I said, look, you guys have to sit down and you have to talk with each other, and you have to make sure that you communicate. You don't just talk at each other, that you communicate and fully understand what's going on. And again, being employees, they're like, yeah. Anyways, so it was curious. Again, it was the whole broadside thing. So he came in, he started talking to her. They were saying words back and forth, words going back and forth, words going back and forth, words going back and forth. So many words were going back and forth, right? And anyway, so our building was separated. There was like the front store area, and there was like the back warehouse area. So anyways, so my field technician is coming to the back warehouse area, and I stop him. I'm like, hey man, yeah, can I talk to you for a second? He's like, oh yeah, sure, what's up? It's like, great. Tell me what she told you. And he was like, what do you mean? I was like, well, so I told you you need to communicate better. And so you two both, I saw you both just throw words at each other. All I want you to do is I want you to tell me what she communicated with you. Man, dude. I wasn't asking this 30 minutes after them doing this. I wasn't asking them 10 minutes. I wasn't asking this after he got off the toilet after they had talked. Literally, he had to walk from here to here. That's how far it was before I confronted him about it. And yeah, he could literally not give me a good goddamn answer about what she had just told him. Like, oh, love of hell, go back and communicate with her, for Christ's sakes. And I think that's the interesting thing, though. I see that with so many people. I think it's gotten worse. And again, in the social media world, everybody wants to be heard. Nobody thinks about listening. And one of the problems that I see with it, again, it's very fascinating. We have so many people that are talking, and they get to the point that they assume nobody else is listening. Again, one of the reasons I'm careful with my words, I may be bombastic, I may be snarky as hell, but you'll notice I'm careful with certain words and things that I say. And the reason is because you fuckers listen to me. You do not know how many people are like, I listen to you. And again, I did the video a little while ago talking about how to get hired for a job. And one of the things I talked about was, when the employer asks you why you want to work for them, that you give them a good goddamn answer. And the interesting thing, one of the meetings I had yesterday, he was like, "Thank you so much for that advice." And the guy said he had literally gone to so many interviews and bombed so many interviews. And whenever they asked him why he wanted to work for their company, he was like, "I need to pay the rent." And he never got those jobs. He literally said the next job interview he went to after watching my video, he came up with some good sounding reason for why he wanted to work for the company, and he actually got that job. The thing is, like with me, like I'm used to people actually not just listening, but using the words that I say in order for them to be able to make their decisions. Again, remember, I was 24 years old. Again, with that direct line to the travel department, dealing with regional directors and managers and everything else. You had to be really goddamn careful. You had to learn to say the proper words or your life was going to be hell. And one of the things that I noticed with so many people is that it's not just even that they don't want to listen. Again, one of the interesting things, it's not just that they don't want to listen, which is its own thing, especially when you're trying to advise people, which is always weird. Anyways, the more interesting thing is you notice at this point, people assume that they're not being listened to. They assume that they're not being heard. Ergo, I think a lot of them don't really think about the words that they're using. And when you don't think about the words that you're using, how in God's name can you actually communicate with the other person? Right? So if I'm sitting here trying to give you advice and I'm getting words thrown at me and I'm having to try to keep up, how am I able to keep up and give you the proper response if the energy isn't being used to truly communicate what it is that you're trying to accomplish? And that's something for you to really be thinking about. When you sit down with that mentor and advisor, are you talking? Are you just fucking happy you have an advisor or something? So you're like, blah! And then what the hell is that advisor supposed to do with it? Are you talking or are you communicating? Those are two very different things. Again, I think about that with the next person I was talking to, or one of the next people I was talking to. And we're talking about their systems. Like, ooh, architecture. Yay, we're going to talk about architecture. Anyways, right? So they've got this whole multi-party thing going on. So they're creating a platform. The platform has multi-parties, at least 2 parties, maybe 3 parties involved. You've got different systems, you got different interfaces and all that kind of stuff. So anyways, we're sitting there, we're talking about it. And my concern, again, would be like with personally identifiable information. So we had a previous meeting. So again, with these meetings, you can do multiple ones over, a period of time. And so I've been talking with them previously, and I said, look, my concern, again, if you're going to have some kind of middleware system. So essentially, these people's system is going to be communicating with these people's system. They're entirely separate. My concern is things like personally identifiable information. And so we're sitting there talking, and he said, yeah, so these people have a database. These people have a database, and these people have a database. And so they're trying to create a platform in order to try to synchronize data and turn that into something useful. Database. Again, database is a fucking thing. Database is a thing. So anyway, so I had given the person the advice before. I was like, look, what I would probably do in that system, if I was really concerned about personally identifiable information or whatever, is I would create a script, I would create a routine on the database server. I would take the information that you care about on that database server from the tables, and then I would put that into a specific table, either a specific table within that database server itself, or maybe into a table on a different database, within the system. Something. Basically, pull out only in the information that you actually need, sans social security number, personal identifiable information, anything like that. Put that into a table or put that into some kind of database system on its own. And then you have your script basically be able to go into that, right? That data that's already cleaned up and send that data up to your system. Again, assume your system will be compromised. Assume your system will be 100% compromised. And basically the idea there is if somebody gets full administrative level read, access or whatever to this table, somehow you did something stupid, it's going to be embarrassing. It's not going to be bankrupting, right? It's like okay, you got some of this information, but it's not personally identifiable, whatever else, shouldn't be too bad. So it's like, okay, so scrape the data or select the data, whatever, from the database, put it into a table or another database server within their own local infrastructure. So then you have something that's pretty clean, and then from there, that goes up to your systems. Again, if it's a database server too, you can have this be, relatively up to date. So as things are processed, you can trigger an event to happen to send the new data up to your systems, and it should be good. So it should be that system creates a system that maintains being up to date, plus it should be at least relatively secure, and if there's a failure, you shouldn't have any major problems. Anyway, so we're saying there. Database. So it's like, okay, so these customers, what are they doing? They're using a database. Okay, so they're all using the same database? No, they're using different databases. So again, I'm thinking, okay, maybe these people have a proprietary MS SQL database. Maybe these people have some janky-ass MS SQL database. Maybe these people have a pretty cool Postgres database, right? They have their front end, they have the database back end, whatever else, right? I don't know. Again, I don't know. I'm talking to people for fucking 30 minutes. I only have so much time. Anyways, so we're sitting there and we're going through, and so we go through that. Last time we go through that. Okay, database, this is what I would do. This is my advice. So anyway, so this time we're sitting there, we're talking, and so it's like, okay, so I want to talk more about creating this, this table or this database or whatever. And so he's like, okay, so when the person is sitting down and they're plugging information into their system, again, figuring out the tables or whatever. And I'm like, okay, so explain this process to me more. When they're sitting down and plugging information into their database, what does that look like? And he was like, well, yeah, so they could be sitting there and they could be plugging information into an Excel spreadsheet, at which point the conversation stopped. Like, wait, why are they plugging information into an Excel spreadsheet? And it's like, well, because a lot of these, the nonprofits or whatever that they're dealing with, they don't have a lot of money, so they might not have like a high-end solution. So maybe all they have is an Excel spreadsheet. And I'm like, oh, okay. Where does the database come into their Excel spreadsheet? I don't know. Maybe there's fucking macros or something going on. I don't know. Where does the database come into Excel spreadsheet? It's like, what? Well, the Excel spreadsheet. And it's like, oh, fuck me. An Excel spreadsheet is not a database. Postgres is a database. MS SQL is a database. MySQL is a database. SQLite is a database. MariaDB is a database. MongoDB is a database. I can go on for database systems. Excel is not a database. Unless they put something new in, I don't think they did. It's not a database. So, hey, that whole conversation we had last time? Yeah, throw that shit in the trash, because, I thought your customers had databases, not fucking Excel spreadsheets. It's like, well, they don't all have Excel spreadsheets. I'm like, oh, okay, so what are the other people doing? And like, well, some people use, again, some SaaS solution. So when this person said database, they just meant something that collects records. Oh, when I'm talking about database, I'm talking about Postgres, SQL, or MySQL, SQLite, MongoDB, blah, blah, blah. Those are not the same fucking things, right? Again, how you integrate the data of customers that have Excel spreadsheets is going to be a whole fucking world difference than how you're going to integrate data with somebody who has their own Postgres server, which is going to be a whole world difference than how you integrate data with somebody who has some kind of software as a service and you have an API connection. They're literally entirely different. The integration, the knowledge you need, the security, payment, all kinds of stuff is entirely different, right? If you're dealing with relational databases, again, whether it's all these stuff that I've talked about before, and you're doing SQL, right? You need to might need to modify it a little bit, right? If they have different tables in their database, this client has this particular schema, this client has this particular schema, this client has this particular schema. So you're like, okay, well, this is the information that I need. So the information that I need to get pulled here. So what I'm going to do is for this client, I'm going to come up with a SQL statement that will go across these 4 tables to provide me the information that I need to dump into my one table. Oh, this client only has 2 tables. Okay, I'll create a SQL statement to go across those 2 tables and dump it into my table. Oh, this client only has 1 table. Cool, I'll do a SQL statement, pull out the specific columns that I need from that one table to dump it into my table. So again, whether you're doing Postgres or MySQL, right, there might be a little bit of difference, but more or less, you're just gonna be customizing some SQL statements in order to dump into the table, and then from there, you can have a pretty standardized way of shipping it off to your systems. The thing is, If you have spreadsheets, right, how you process CSV is an entirely different world, right? It's gonna be not impossible. It's gonna be ugly. It's gonna be ugly. Not impossible. You can do it, but processing CSV is gonna be, or parsing CSV is gonna be much different than simply doing SQL statements. Again, if you're using software as a service, right, and you're doing an API call. How you do those API calls, what you're able to access out of those API, who the hell knows, right? If you've got a database, like if you say they own their own database, the expectation is you have full ability to see every goddamn thing in that database, and you can export the entire database if you really wanted to, right? Right, that's not the same as software as a service. They're going to give you an API connection, and through that API, you'll be able to do whatever they allow you to do. What will you be able to? I don't know, because I don't know that API. And here's the thing, if you use multiple different software as a services, this will have an API, and this will have an API, and this will have an API, and this have an API. What you can do over here may not be what you can do over here. What's very easy to do here might cost you a lot to do over here, right? That's why with platforms you have what are called integration teams. You have teams that their entire job is to build integrations between all of these systems, right? Again, do you have money for a team to build integrations? No. But I thought it was very curious here because again, like this was a very, very good piece of, very good example of. I sat there and I gave advice based off of being told that all of these clients would have a database. So when he told me that it was a database, I gave advice based off of being a damn database, when in reality it was, oh no, they just have ways of collecting information. Oh God, right? And these are just 2 good examples to be thinking about, again, and like what I'm actually dealing with you folks. Again, if you're watching this video, you are the target demographic for the people that come and ask me questions. And again, it was just interesting, these 2 particular situations where it's like, yeah. And again, for me as a mentor, this is one of the things where you can laugh at the other person, but you also I realize I need to ask some better questions. Let's define some things. Again, Socratic argument. If you have not read Plato, again, I have to say, like a lot of people like, Eli, what should I do to become better at technology? Read Plato. Plato is great. It's something called Socratic argument. It's all about understanding what the hell the other person is actually asking. And I realize that for myself. I do need to verify even these short things. I need to verify what the hell these people are actually talking about. But I did think it was curious. Again, in these two situations where, again, the advice that I felt that I was giving was severely undercut by not actually fully understanding what was being asked and the people's environment. And so it's something to sit there and to think about with yourself when you're interacting with people. Again, are you Are you communicating with people, or are you talking at people? Again, I think about this when I was young. When I was young and I was testing out my Aspie superpowers. Again, listening, right? Listening. So again, as an Aspie, one of the things that I lack is the ability to intuit nonverbal communication. So it's not necessarily that I'm a good listener. I'm just a crap talker. I know you might be saying that. What? Eli says he's a crap talker? That doesn't make any sense. He sits here and talks into a video camera like hours a day. It's like, yes, because that's completely fucking normal. Nothing says completely normal and sane as talking into a video camera in a room in your basement for multiple hours a day. Anyways. All right, so anyway, so when I was younger, I was in high school and early, like 18. I was trying to figure out that thing, like listening to people. And one of the things that I realized is, again, that people don't realize what they're saying. People will talk, and then they literally do not realize what information they're giving out to the world. And so when I was younger, still running after the girls, again, in my generation, we didn't have Netflix. So we tried to do this thing called have sex. I mean, for the 25-year-olds out there, we'll get to that in another couple of years. Maybe by the time you're 30, we can have this whole discussion about sex. But apparently the young people have found Netflix, so they don't care about sex anymore. Anyway, so we didn't have Netflix or any of that kind of stuff. So we actually like chased girls or boys or whoever you wanted to chase back then. Anyways, and so one of the things I was trying to figure out that whole thing with flirting with girls and all that, and so I'd go, especially with the girls, not a great talker, so I'd sit there and I'd listen. And then what I found fascinating was I was like, at a certain point I realized, I realized that I didn't think they realized how much information that they were giving. That they just sit there and talk and talk and talk and talk and talk and talk and talk, and you can sit there and listen, and they would just give you their entire life story. And the interesting thing about giving you their entire life story wasn't that they did that, but that they didn't actually realize that they did that. And so I came up with the great Eli Dini, right? Where I started learning to read women's minds, young women's minds. Oh, they're like, oh my God, how do you do it? So I'd sit there, be hanging out with a cute girl for a few days. And then after a few days, I'd be like, well, one of the things I can do, I don't talk about it a lot, but I can, if I stare into your eyes, again, this was the age of Wicca. Remember Wiccans? Remember Wiccans? Oh, little Wiccans. Anyways, right. So anyways, the age of Wiccan, incense and that kind of stuff. Anyways. I can look into your eyes and I can tell you about yourself or whatever. And they'd be like, that's garbage, right? So I'd be like, oh, okay, so sit down. Okay, give me your hands. Give me your hand. All right. Okay, let me look into your eye. And then I'd look into their eyes. I'm like, okay. And then I would tell them all this stuff. I'd tell them personal things, right? Because I did tarot reading back in the day when I was in high school. I did tarot reading too. I'd sit there and tell them personal things about, oh my God, how do you know that? And I look in their eyes, it's like, when you look into a person's eyes, it's a window into their soul. So if you really look at them hard enough, you can see what's going on. Yeah, I don't, fucking, whatever, horse crap. Again, it sounds, right? You think you know how you sounded as when you're 40, and probably as an 18-year-old, it would sound a whole lot worse. But anyways, like, oh my God, I did this so many times. And all I was doing was listening to the person, and then spitting the information back. I wasn't reading their fucking minds. I just listened to them. They were just so not used to anybody listening to them. The thought that somebody listened to them a little bit, that would have been fucking magic as far as they were concerned. Use this knowledge responsibly, young people. I hand you this knowledge to be used responsibly. But again, I found that a fascinating thing when I was a young person. Because yeah, people people put out words, but they don't really think that they're being heard. And the curious thing, again, from a business standpoint or whatever else, is amazing how much information people will give you because they don't think you're actually listening. But on the other hand, again, from an advisor, mentor, actually trying to get something accomplished, the other issue that you can run into is that people don't actually think that they're being heard, so that they throw out words without the expectation of there actually being much value in what they're saying. And so that can cause problems all the way around. So yeah, something to ponder and something to think about. When you sit down with an advisor or a mentor, have you made sure that you're going to be able to communicate appropriately your ideas to the degree that the person that is there to give you advice will be able to give you something valuable? So they are going to give you advice based off of their understanding of the situation. And you'll notice that kind of phrase comes up a lot in the professional world. Based off of my understanding of the situation, this is what I'm going to say. The issue is, if they don't fully understand the situation, the advice that you give might be actually, frankly, worse than worthless, right? If I'm explaining to you how to build systems and I diagram something out based off of how I understand your situation, but it's not actually your situation, it would be worse to build that based off of what I give than to not build anything at all sometimes. So anyways, some things to ponder. Some things to ponder. And yeah, that's right. And I'll tell you, again, I'm not a dog. I'm not an alpha male or anything. I just do what I do. Again, it's kind of curious. I will tell you, for the young guys out there, listening to young women gets you pretty far. I'm just gonna put this out there. Like if you're trying to, like, Eli, how do you do the dating thing? It's like, well, clean yourself up. Do things that are interesting. Like, why should anybody be interested in you? And then listen to the other side. You'll be shocked how far that gets you. It's not that complicated. But anywho, I don't know. I'm a not boomer, so that's just my old school advice. Yeah. Anywho, that's all I got for today. Gonna be working on the Introduction to Programming series. So Silicon Dojo, again, we have those self-study classes. So the class I'm starting today is going to be the Introduction to Programming series. So we're going to talk about wireframes and pseudocode and all that kinds of stuff. So I'm going to start working on that. Maybe it'll be done by next week. Who knows? We all know how long these self-study programs take to actually create. So I'll be starting on that. And again, a whole bunch of other stuff is going on with Silicon Dojo. And yeah, see y'all later.